So I normally start my episode saying, "Welcome to a new episode of A Tale of Two Scribes," but today's a little different because not only do we have A Tale of Two Scribes going on, but we have Spies, Lies, and Private Eyes with Terrence McCauley. We have a blended show for everyone on both of our networks.
Right. Yes, we do, my friend. Thank you for agreeing to do this one. It's been something we've been talking about for a while. My name is Terrence McCauley, and I'm the host of Spies, Lies, and Private Eyes. And just like Eric, I'm also a writer of a lot of my own stuff. So we figured that since we both have books coming out this week, it'd be a great idea for us to not only share the release date, but also share our podcasts as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't remember when we sent that memo to each other saying, "Hey, let's both put a book out on July 15th," but we stuck to it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that wound up being a happy accident, a mixed blessing, if you will.
Absolutely.
So anyway, everybody who's listening probably already knows Eric, and you know that Eric grew up in Connecticut, and he relocated to the South after college for some reason, and now his wanderlust has never left him, and he's always yearning for the next adventure. And for some reason, he has decided to dip his foot and his rest of himself in the publishing industry. And this is his next book. You may have heard about it, might have mentioned it once or twice on Facebook, but he's kind of shy. Supreme Justice is the third book in his Body Man series. So I know that you've spoken about this project in bits and pieces over the last couple of years in various places, but why don't you tell us a little bit about Supreme Justice?
Yeah, so it had a so thank you for that introduction, by the way. Yes, and probably most of the people that are sick of seeing my Facebook posts or X posts are probably blocked me or muted me. So they might not see this anyways. No, you as you know this business, my friend,
Yep.
you've got to promote your stuff, even when it's tough to, and people go, "Why are you doing it?" Because unfortunately, no one's going to promote you. Maybe for a lot of money, someone will promote you, but I think authors most cases are typically their best advocate for their stories.
Yeah, they are. And it's also, if you don't make your own noise, you'll be drowned by the silence.
Yeah.
So, that's just the way it is in today's world of social media and trying to separate yourself from everyone else. I totally get it.
Yeah, 100%. So real quick, the backstory on this is I had started the Body Man series. Actually, I had started this book before I had the contract for the Body Man series. So
Okay.
I had wrote the Body Man and man, I don't even remember now, 2017, 18 time frame. Did my queries, did all that stuff, got my rejections, went to Thriller Fest, got rejections.
Mhm.
And I was going through a tough time in 2020, not a good time in life, going through divorce. And I had pitched the Body Man, but I had kind of backed off on it. So ironically, the day mediation took place, so I kind of knew what my future would look like with the divorce, with child support and custody time and all that.
Mhm.
The day that answers kind of came to me at the lawyer's office, I walked out and I'm not meaning it cliche or in a bad way because a divorce is a horrible thing to go through, but I felt this burden lift off me. And
Right.
I felt like I need to write again. I hadn't wrote that year hardly at all, 2020. The pandemic was the easy part of the year for me. And not saying that lightly, but the divorce was what was killing me.
Right.
Um, so I had wanted to go back and tell Mercy's story because the book hadn't Body Man hadn't been published yet, but the early readers had all said, "You got something with that Mercy Deata character. You need to pursue that." Well, I didn't know what who she was. She was a female assassin. She kind of played a one-off role in The Body Man, and I didn't know what I was going to do with her. Um, I kind of figured it out that year, and I just made notes of it. I just kept putting it aside. Well, that night after mediation, I sat down and started writing what was going to be a standalone for Mayor C.
Mhm.
It's actually had and I've told this on one other podcast. I actually had a title for it. It's called "Put Her Down" was the name of the title. So I started writing this book, Put Her Down, and I wrote about 28,000 words between then and um, late February of 2021 when I got the publishing contract for the Body Man series. So I put Mercy aside, started working back on the Body Man. It came out that year. Then I had to finish Breach of Trust, had to work on that. So her story kept just getting pushed aside. Well, as I started to think about what was my third book in the Body Man series, I
Hmm.
ended up going back to her and said, well, what if I take what I wrote for her and kind of blend that into what's happening after Breach of Trust, the
Okay.
second book of the Body Man series. So I kind of took this. I kind of so book four in the Body Man series is called Downfall, which will come out summer 2026. And Supreme Justice kind of it doesn't fill the gap. It's a standalone story, but there's stuff happening between the Breach of Trust book and Downfall book during Supreme Justice, as Merci is also targeting the husband of a Supreme Court justice in chapter one. So there's a big case that's hitting the Supreme Court, and you have four judges on one side, four judges on another side. You got one judge in the middle that won't show her cards of where she's going to go. And
Hmm.
so some powers that be decide that's who we go after. That's how we force this decision the way we want it, not the way justice should be served.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of information and a lot of things that happen in each of your books. I mean, it started with the Body Man, then it went to Breach of Trust, and then you had like the other story that you told, Ransomed Daughter, which
Mhm.
also got a lot of attention as well. So, and that was more of a novella.
Yeah.
So you've really spread your wings in both the full kind of novel format, and then you've also dipped your foot in the pool of the novella format. Which one do you find a little bit more rewarding, or do they each have their own appealing qualities?
Yeah, they both have their appealing colors. I will say the stories, the full length novels, kind of take a little bit more precedent, only because, and I hate to say this, is they're more profitable.
Yeah,
So from a publishing standpoint, which I have to have a publisher's cap on now, besides a writer's,
right.
since I've got my own imprint. The novella did well, but they just don't. It's a smaller market from at least from what I found in my experience. Other people could have a
Yes.
different experience. But I like them because you can write them a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And you can kind of take basically a mini novel and you can say it in 20 or 25,000 words, 30,000 max versus 95,000 or whatever.
Right.
So they're a lot easier to compose. And I know some
Hmm.
people might not see it that way because they go, well, you still have a full story, you still have to tell it. That part doesn't bother me mentally. I guess I've been doing this for 10 years now, so I can handle that side of it. It's the
Yeah.
question of like, how do you market it? How do you do that? That kind of makes me go, man, the full length novels have a better reach out there.
Right. Yeah, they do. And also, I think the reason why you've seen some of the bigger publishers dip their foot in the pool of the novella and then quickly retract them is because it costs as much for them to promote a novella that as it does a full length novel.
Yes.
And that makes sense in today's marketplace. I don't defend the business that much, but I do understand that. And I
Right.
can, people say, well, they should invest more in novellas. Maybe the market will be there. Yeah, but you know what? They marketing a Stephen King book these days with all of the distractions is tough enough, much
Mhm.
less for a niche market like novella readers. I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah. The only thing, honestly, and you know this as well, because you've done the same thing. You have written a novella, and you've done more than one novella.
Mm,
The only thing you save money on probably is or not probably, is what you do is editorial.
yeah,
So you're hiring an editor, they're editing 30,000 words versus 95,000. So but that's not a massive amount of money difference,
right.
but that's where your savings are. You're still paying full price for a cover. Like you
Hmm.
said, you can't market it any different. It's not like well, it's a third of a book, so I'll do a third of the marketing. Sure, you're definitely guaranteed to make a third of the revenue then.
Right.
I mean, so yeah, it's the business side of it drives this. And I would love to see novellas take off. And I kind of thought, and that's part of my thought process with doing Ransom Daughter, is, and myself included, everyone's attention span is getting so much, thanks
Yeah.
to these little devil machines here and that we all carry around and here's
Right.
everything we say. We got 15-second attention spans. So I thought, well, that if people are going to read a book, they can read it in 2 hours versus 5 or 6. Hey, maybe that will catch better, and maybe it will. Just I didn't see that to be necessarily the case in my
No.
experience.
Me neither. No, with the Chicago 63, it got a lot of nice press and it was really popular with those who found it. But you're exactly right. And for us, it takes us as much money to publish a 30,000 word novel through Ingram or one of the other
Yep.
services as it does a 90,000 word
Hmm.
novel. And so, and also too, when you publish a novella, it was, we want to sell it for a cheaper price. Well, Ingram isn't going to sell it if it's too cheap. So, if you knock it down to 299, well, guess what? You're competing with full books that are 299 by much known authors. It's a business that is really tough to find an angle on. Now you could sell it for 99 cents on Kindle or give it away, but when you're an artistic person like we are, we don't necessarily want to think of our work as a product. We want to think of it as art, and
Sure,
that's a tough
absolutely.
balance to strike.
Yeah, yeah, and you also your time is precious. So I mean, I don't do this for the money per se. I have a full-time job, but at the same time, I mean, I do it for the creative endeavor. Absolutely is my top priority. But there is a side of me that looks at it and goes, okay, well, if I'm going to invest time in this and try to market it, try to sell it, well, I don't want to lose money. So, so you
Right?
got to have that business mindset of why do I want to give a book away? And I've done some free Kindle giveaways, absolutely.
Yeah.
Stock people's Kindles, that's great. Does that necessarily mean they're going to buy one of your other books or even read that one that was for free? That's where
Yep.
you start seeing that, and I've done the same thing. I've gone on before with my Kindle and been like, "Oh, free books."
Yes.
I don't know that I've ever opened one of them and read any of them on it. To be completely honest, have I ever read any of them? Not that I recall.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, I know that's it. It's almost like if there's no investment on either end, then there's not going to be any investment when it comes to reading it, or that will not translate to where your new book is because they'll figure, well, if it was for free once, I just have to wait it out and it'll be free in a
right.
little while. And that's yeah, it's a vicious cycle that it's impossible to break.
Why do I want to pay $6.99 for an ebook when he might put it for 99 cents in 3 months? And man, $6.99 is a lot of money. It's like, how much did you just waste at Starbucks this morning? And that investment's already gone because you've already gone to the restroom. You know, I took my daughter to Starbucks the other day, and I think it was like between the two of us, she got cheese, little cheese board there as well. So I think it was like a $22 investment. I'm like, that's a lot of money for stopping in Starbucks to get two drinks and some cheese.
Right, I know, right? They get you coming and going over there. They always have. But
Always.
people keep coming back.
Yeah, they do.
And with you, the people keep coming back to blurb your books, and it's awesome to see how many repeat people you have
Hmm.
that found you early on and have stayed with you all the way through your writing career. You've gotten for Supreme Justice, you've gotten accolades from people like Ben Coase and Adam Hamdy and Kashif over at Best Thriller Books, and even Don Bentley, who I've also interviewed as well. Part of this publishing journey isn't just about the art; it's also about the people you meet along the way, isn't it?
Hmm. It 100% is, and it's the part that I didn't see coming. And I've talked about this over the years. Obviously, I've done a few podcasts in the past 4 or 5 years. Um, I thought, coming from the business world and still in the business world, I thought, there's a level of competition there. So, hey, I'll meet some nice people. Terrence is a great guy, but Terrence probably wants to sell more books than me, and Terrence isn't going to give me his attention and time because I'm his competitor. And that's 180 degrees furthest from the truth. It doesn't
Mhm.
work that way. The author community, there's always an outlier. There's always an asshole
Sure.
in every group. Of course, that's how that works. There's always one. Maybe some people think I am, but I don't think I am. I try to be nice to everybody. Um, but no, there's that competition factor isn't there. And I think part of that too is because most people that read, it's pretty rare to have someone say, "Hey, I read one book this year."
Right.
Really? No. Normally, if someone reads and they like thrillers or they like romance or horror or sci-fi, whatever, they read pretty habitually. They read so your thriller. If you're writing in the thriller genre, the Don Bentleys and the Jack Carrs and the Adam Hamdys and fill in the blank, the Brad Thors, they're not your competition.
No.
Um, and most of the time, what you'll find is if you connect with any of those authors, even the ones that are established and have made, have kind of reached that echelon that most people want to or think they want to attain, um,
Right.
they're super open to talking to people. If you catch them on social media, or especially if you go to a conference, you'll find that you can sit there and have, you can have a beer with Brad Taylor. You can talk to Don Bentley. You can I ran into Lee Child back in
Yeah,
2016 or 2017, made a stupid comment about me being short like Tom Cruise, but he was super generous with me and gave me a couple minutes of his time. And, David Morrell, all these other authors. And it's
yeah,
weird because you'll meet these ones that are, had a career for years and, kind of made it before the digital age.
right.
And they're still giving advice and giving and helping out that next generation of writers that are coming up, which is really amazing.
Right. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And it's funny. We talk about how publishing at its heart really is a business, and
Hmm.
there should be competition there. You would imagine, especially when you've got a lot of books coming out at once, but it just doesn't work out that way. And I think
Yeah.
you hit it right on the head when you said people read multiple books a year. And if they stay in a genre, they will look for new people to try because they're always looking for that next unknown author that they'll be able to say, "Oh, I've been reading that person for years," and
Exactly.
not everybody else knows them. It's like that in the Western genre too. You think they'd be all killing each other for the few eyeballs that are reading westerns these days, but that's not the case because once they get into that glide path, they stay in there and they look for other people to read, and that's the same thing in this particular crime thriller genre that we're in.
Yeah, I think all the genres work there. So I'm working on an anthology project now that hopefully will come out later this year, early next year, and it's a horror, which is not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's 13 of us that have written on it. We've kind of talked a little bit about it, so I can talk about it today. There's 13 of us that have written short stories around a central kind of theme,
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch of them are several of them are in the genre, and successful in the genre, and yeah, the horror community just kind of embraces even some of us that aren't horror writers, and it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing to be involved with. That's again, that's kind of the nice surprise I didn't expect. Just because you don't know what you don't know. So
Right,
coming into this, I didn't realize that you have a community of people that actually have your back, and you're not like, oh, the new guy's coming in and he's trying to take food off my table.
right,
They don't look at it that way. That probably, I think, and I hate to say this, but probably I think where the competition side of it probably flips in is the publishing side. Like the actual business side is where you might have competition where we're not going to let them have this, editor, or we're not going to have this, or I think that's more where the business side, and that's kind of the purity part that we're involved in is the creative side and the authors is much more, I think, team effort that happens between the group. And you write your own stories, but to
right.
get advice, I messaging David Darling yesterday. Hey, Dave, I hadn't talked to him in a little while. Hey, what's been going on? And he was breaking down for me what he's been working on and how things have been going and all that, and sharing stuff. And I'll respond to him this afternoon and share kind of what's been on my plate and the pitfalls I've had and the positives I've had. So that community is really really special.
Yeah, and David Darling is a community in and of himself.
He
Have
is.
you ever met him in person?
No, I've not met, 85% of the authors I've interacted with I've probably never met, and probably 50% of them might never never meet in person. I have
David
not.
is David is an incredibly funny guy. He is all over the place. He's one of the most genuine people in publishing, and I've met him once at Killer Nashville,
Okay.
and he leaves an impression, and it's a wonderful impression. When
Yeah.
you get the chance to hang out with him, you're gonna laugh a lot, and you're gonna learn a lot too. He's a rare individual.
Well, I think Boucher Khan is going to Calgary next year, 2026.
Okay,
That one's I'm penciled in. I think that one will actually work with my schedule. The conferences the last couple of years, I've kind of had these thoughts of going, oh, I'll go to this one, I'll go to that one, and they've seemed to be falling on either a kid weekend or a 9 to 5 job stretch where I do accounting and finance work. So those first like 5 to 8, 9 business days of the month, I pretty much have to sacrifice part of my body to the company to get a day off so I don't get it,
sure.
basically. I'm not giving up my body parts.
Yeah,
So it seems like, yeah. So like even this year, Thriller Fest actually, I was like, oh, I can do Thriller Fest this year. It was the start of one of the weeks for custody for my daughter.
right.
Okay, not giving up time with my daughter to go to New
No,
York.
no, no, no.
New York's great. I got friends there. I love writing. I don't love it that much. And then BoucherCon this year is in New Orleans, which I was there 4 years back, whatever, how many years ago that was now when they canceled it, and I still went. And the hurricane hit, and I got stuck. I almost got stuck there. I got out like the last day. Crazy story. Oh, I'll go back and do that one. It's the weekend of my daughter's 14th birthday. I'm like,
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. I don't even have custody that weekend, but I'll have her for part of the day on her birthday. And it's like, yeah,
Right.
the conference would be cool, it'd be wonderful, but I don't want to miss seeing her for that stretch of days just to go to a writers conference. So
Yeah. You have to have your own life in mind when you go to these things.
yeah,
A, it's expensive.
yes,
That's what new writers think, that if I network, I'll be able to get through. And yeah, it's great if you can afford to do it, both in time and in money.
right,
If you can't, then you know what? Keep in mind that there is limited success of what you can do, whether you're looking for an agent or you're looking to meet new authors. The internet makes a lot of that possible 365 days a week, a year. So, look at it that way, and it's free as long as you have internet access, of
yeah,
course.
yeah, exactly. Normally, you can go to your library though and get it if you have to. So,
Yeah.
so fortunately, there's options, but absolutely, yeah. I've kind of I was gung ho on conferences. I know we've talked about this probably in the past. I was gung
Mhm.
ho Thriller Fest. I went in 17, 18, and 19, I believe, were the 3 years straight I went, and I
Yeah.
look forward to going back one day.
Yeah.
It'll probably be after my kids or my son's starting college here in like 4 weeks.
Wow.
So he's starting this fall. And my daughter will, 4 years from now will probably be following that same path. So at that point, okay, my free time kind of takes a different level,
Right.
and I don't have to base as much things around missing out on time with my kids. So that's probably when I'll be in, my early 50s. I'll probably start going back to some more conferences.
Mhm.
But again, the cost factor is a huge, especially like I know we've talked about Thriller Fest a lot over the years. That's the granddaddy, but
Yeah.
it's also the royalty one in the sense of that's the one that you're spending the most money. Go spend 5 days in New York, and
Yeah.
there's no such thing as a cheap date in New York, you know?
No, no, and you can only glom so much free food at the buffet or at the the free events that they have, and they're scaling back on that too. Hey,
Yeah,
you step out of the hotel and you're going to spend $50, on most meals by
yeah,
the time you add tip and tax and everything else. So yeah, I mean it's definitely an investment, and that kind of investment I always tell new authors to consider making in yourself, in terms of, instead
right.
of spending the money on airline and hotel to go there, why don't you spend it on a better cover, a
Yep.
formatter, a proofreader, and some ads on Facebook and Amazon, stuff like that.
1000%. So I was talking just real quick about Bashir Khan and my daughter's birthday this year. I can still make a day and a half of it if I fly out after I see her.
Okay.
And I ran the numbers and looked at it, and I said I could do that, or since the end of Supreme Justice takes place in Ireland, I could go do a book signing in Ireland for
Okay.
about the same amount of money, and haven't committed to it yet. I haven't lined it up, but I've made some contacts. Yeah, maybe I'll fly to Ireland for a few days and do a book signing for the same amount of money versus going to a conference.
That would be
Um,
awesome.
just for the experience of it. I don't know that it would make me my money back necessarily. Probably wouldn't, but I
Hmm.
can almost guarantee BoucherCon won't make me my money back either if I go to the conference.
That's right.
So maybe for the experience that if I'm over there, if I'm over in Europe, then it's like, well, just stay for an extra couple days, take a couple more days off work, and then, go to knock off another country I haven't been to. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't been to Ireland either. I'd love to do a book signing either in Ireland or in England, where I have been. I'd love to be able to do one in London, but it's just that's the kind of the way you have to look at it. You can't look at it as that you're going to go to something like Boucher Khan and make all these contacts and your career will meteorically rise. It
Right.
rarely happens that way. And New Orleans is awesome, but this time of year, man, it is humid as hell. And they have great food and great people, but that weather is a huge factor for me deciding where I'm going to go.
And Bourbon Street with heat and humidity. I'll tell you what, it doesn't smell good in November. So what do you think it smells like in late August, early September? I mean, piss doesn't get better with heat.
No, no,
So,
it doesn't. Neither does puke either. And I'll tell you, but if you have writer's block, you just walk down there with a coffee at around 10 o'clock at night and write about the first five people you see, and that will completely get your creative juices going.
So I think I've told you this before. So one of the reasons I still went, even though the conference got canceled there during COVID, was I had a chapter in my mind taking place at Cafe du Monde that I wanted to write, and I didn't want to just imagine it. I wanted to sit myself in a chair, see what I saw, and write it. And it's exactly what I did. So I went two different nights, two different times for about an hour each with my laptop, and I just sat there writing. And I was, the stuff that took place and the people I watched are 100% real in the story because I watched those things happen. And then my character is obviously different in the interaction with someone that shows up that wasn't really there in my head, besides that.
Right.
It was one of those things that was totally worth going to just sit there and experience that. And I did want to mention to talk about that with you real quick because you were, like you mentioned, in London, which you gave me some advice. I ended up not being able to go to the cigar stuff. I ended up
Oh,
not being able to do, but you did mention where to go have dinner. So
oh, right. The Savoy. Yeah, you went with your mom, I
I,
think.
I went with my mom and my cousin, yeah, and that was the best meal I had on the entire trip. The beef Wellington
Yeah.
was split. I had it in one other place thinking it would be just as good, and it was not even half as good. So I
Right.
was very like, oh man, I should have stopped at the one place. So
Yeah, no, so yeah, that's one of those things that I know it's a tourist trap, and I know a lot of Americans go there, but I just love the energy of that place, the Savoy in London.
yeah,
I love the way it looks, and I love the feeling when you walk in, and I love the food, even though it's a Gordon Ramsay restaurant. I'm not a big fan of celebrity chef restaurants, but this one is fantastic. So
hey,
I
when I went, he wasn't out there yelling at anybody or throwing stuff at anybody.
yeah,
So, so
yeah, no, oh man, I just love London to pieces.
yeah,
It's great,
yeah,
and
it's
I'm
a
a
great.
New Yorker.
It's one of those cities where if people I've been three times so far now in my life, and I probably won't go again for a while because there's a lot of other places I need to start visiting.
Hmm.
But it's one of those places if you can get to at least once, if not multiple times, it's really amazing. Just the history, the just what you get to see. It needs to be on people's bucket list for sure.
Definitely does. Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world, and you get to see, you can actually experience the history itself. You can go to Buckingham Palace, you
Yeah.
can take a train and go to Windsor and experience all of these places, and the history's just everywhere. And for creative people like us, that you can't really describe the benefit you get from being steeped in past experience like that.
No, 100%. And that's one of the blessings we get to have, and especially for us, if you can, if it can happen this way, is if you can integrate travel into your stories or uh, creatively find a way of taking a trip and going, how do I fictionalize this?
Hmm.
And I think it helps your readers to be able to, because Google Earth works great. I was
Yeah.
showing my daughter a couple weeks ago some things. I think we were watching a season of Survivor, and I was just like, "Oh, honey, I need to pull up Google Earth and show you this thing." And someone had posted somewhere on social media, this is where they filmed because Survivor's filmed only in Fiji now for I don't know how many years because it's
Okay.
cheaper. They don't move Survivor around anymore because it was so much expense to, recreate everything around the world.
Right.
So you can literally go on Google Earth in Fiji and you go to multiple different islands and it names it Survivor Tribal Council or Survivor this and that. And you go and zoom down and you can do the little person thing and you can stand there and go, oh, that's where they do the reward stuff or that's where they do that. And
Okay.
so it's cool. So you can put yourself and you can do that for writing. You can go put
Yeah.
yourself in London outside the gates of Buckingham Palace. It's a little bit different when you stand there and you watch the changing of the guard.
Right.
And like I had when I had been seen it a couple times before, but I took my mom back in November, and she had never gone, and we were kind of standing in a spot that probably wasn't the best spot. And police officer comes over to me, and she's like, "Hey, they move it all. Every day is a little different. It's not always the same exact route." She's like, go stand over there where there's not many people because that's the route they're using today and not everyone's going to be there. So we were able to go stand up there and they marched right past us. And of course, everyone fills in behind us as it's happening, but they were all like on the other side of the statue there thinking it was going to happen on one of the other roads.
Right.
So again, kind of cool stuff that you can be there and experience it. And I just got my mom had never been overseas. She'd been to Canada and I think one of the Caribbean islands.
Right.
She had never been, overseas for a trip like that, and it was just a cool experience to be able to share with her. And we had a blast going through England and Scotland and Ireland, and had fun. and got
Yeah.
to fictionalize it in Supreme Justice, and and then write the trip off.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
My
That's
portion.
back to the business end of it. Yep. That helps. Yeah. Being able to
It's,
write that off.
if anyone wants to know where a future Body Man book's going, I'm going to Australia and New Zealand in 2026. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow. Okay.
we're finding a way to put that in the narrative of what's going to happen in book five, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. 5 and 6, you've got two countries over there. So stretch it out.
There's definitely going to do that. So. But yeah, no, thank you for the questions. So book three in the Body Man series, Supreme Justice. Super proud of this book. Hard at work at the fourth book. I'm also working on another book for the Omega Group that I might try to put out before. I might try to put out early 2026. If it's something I wrote years ago that I'm trying to see if it's fixable, which it is. So I'm
Right.
having to fix it and working on it slowly. So I'll try to finish that in the fall, and then that one I'll probably do a quick turnaround time for come out with that. So.
Right. And you're also your books also have fantastic covers as well. And you put me onto the person who does them for you. And
Yes.
he did the one for my book, The Twilight Town, and very talented artist.
Very talented, and you can either give him a lot of details or not very many details, and he'll give you 4 or 5 options to choose from. At times, with some of the books, he's done that for me, and like, okay, which is the direction you want to go with this? Yeah. Again, that's where the community kicks in, and then we need to talk about Twilight Town, but that's where the
Sure.
community kicks in, and it's so important to network with authors for creative stuff, it helps, but also can really help with because the authors are so generous with each other that you go, hey, do you got a cover guy or do you have recommendations? And
Hmm.
you'll normally find an author, especially if they're on the indie side. Obviously, if they're with, Random House or Penguin, it's done in house and they're not gonna, they're not doing external covers that I'm
Right.
aware of. But if you're on the indie side or small publisher side, yeah, people will be like, yeah, man, I use this guy. No one's ever heard of him, but he does phenomenal. And you can then normally see, like, well, show me some of the covers he's done for you. And you can see exactly the quality you're going to have before you hire someone, invest money, and then realize, okay, this dude's doing it on Canva, and I could make a better cover if I was drunk and I had a monkey doing it for me. Great. Lovely.
Canva is great for some things. I use it all the time, but it's not great for everything.
Not great for everything. So, well, hey,
No.
we need to switch this over and we need to talk about Twilight Town. So, um, before we do that, though, I want to ask you for give the 30,000 foot view for everyone of where we're coming with this. But before you do that, was this influenced a lot? I would assume the answer is yes. On writing a novella about the attempt on Kennedy. Is this where that idea came from?
Sure. What happened with the Twilight Town was that I had I wanted to tell the Kennedy story that because I've been following it for years,
Hmm.
but I wanted to tell it from a different perspective. And a
Okay.
lot of the novelizations have taken place firmly rooted in the mob
Right.
or firmly rooted in intelligence. And for me, I wanted to tell it as what it really was, which was a crime. It was a
Hmm.
crime that happened on a Dallas street, and it happened to be an assassination of a president, but I wanted to tell it from the perspective of three corrupt police officers of Dallas PD. One of them is corrupt because he's too ambitious. The other one is corrupt because um, he is an incredibly greedy and thoughtless person. And the third one is an evil person and trying to do his best to affect the change he wants to see in the world. Unfortunately, that change is horrible for everyone who doesn't look like him.
Hmm.
So there, two of the characters are fictional. The one in the middle is J.D. Tippett, and he was the officer who actually got killed on 10th and Patton in Dallas
Hmm.
several minutes after Kennedy was killed. Oswald was believed to have killed Tippett and believed to have killed Kennedy. In this book, I go to great pains to show that I don't think he was the person who pulled the trigger, though he was involved. In terms of writing the novella Chicago '63,
Hmm.
that book came out of the Twilight Town because the
Gotcha.
Twilight Town starts in February of 1963, goes all the way to the end of the assassination on November 22nd, 1963. I had the idea for Dan Wilson, one of the protagonists, to uncover a plot to kill Kennedy before Dallas. And that was an actual plot that happened in Chicago, 1963, in early November.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I wrote that, loved it, loved the entire section, but then the character of Abraham Golden, who is based on the real life character Abraham Bolden in my book, um, he disappears after that Chicago plot in early November. Well, the
Mm.
book continues on until November 22nd. And I said, I love this character. I don't know what, I don't really want to lose him, but I can't keep shoehorning him in the book.
Right.
And I had to come up with a reason to keep him around. So that's why I took that section out, mentioned it in the Twilight Town, and created Chicago 63, a novella.
I love it. I love how you have blended fact and fiction basically. And I think that's what really grabs readers' attention. And it's timely too. Probably, and I know you didn't realize this a while back when you were writing these. Little did you know that the JFK files would be, released in 2025.
Right.
Um, which though I haven't heard much about them. So I'm assuming I actually looked at a few things online when they first got those first month after they got released. It's like, what do you know? There's not
Right.
a document in there that like, J. Edgar Hoover or whoever, someone from the FBI is talking to someone from the CIA and there's a note that says, "Hey, let's whack Kennedy. Let's take this guy
Yeah,
out.
right.
Hey, this he wants to get rid of the CIA. We're gonna smoke this fool."
Right, right, exactly right. Yeah, no, there was no literal smoking gun. There was no figurative smoking gun, but there was an awful lot of smoke.
Yes.
And that confirms what people have been reading about since the first book against the assassination came out in 1964, I believe, by Mark Lane.
Hmm.
And there are details that have been found in several different places ever since. Snippets of details, suspicions, people who we thought knew each other that we couldn't prove, but
Hmm.
now we can prove.
Yeah.
And the one overriding part of the entire Kennedy story involves Oswald. Oswald was incredibly involved with a ton of people in intelligence that he might not have even known were intelligence operatives.
Hmm.
And that just doesn't happen in everyday life to
Right.
civilians. It just doesn't. And I think the bigger cover up was probably after the assassination. I don't think that this was a plot that was hatched in the deepest, darkest oak paneled room, cigar smoke filled room in Washington. A bunch of power brokers rubbing their hands together and chortling while they're plotting the destruction of a president. I don't think that happened. I think it was about 10 people who were tangentially involved in intelligence operations, knew how to pull this off, and did so. And then the cover up happened afterwards
Hmm.
when people like the CIA and the FBI saw that they knew these people, these were contractors. We can't get involved in this stuff. I think that's where the cover up happened.
It's almost like you're saying Lyndon B. Johnson wasn't sitting on the toilet yelling to a secretary, "Hey, I want the big chair now.
Right, right, exactly
I want
right.
the
And
golden toilet."
I want the golden toilet. Yeah. And I mean, too, people, when you, that's why history, I think, is important, even if you're writing something in modern day, because if you can come up with, you look at history, you'll come up with the reason why things happen.
Yeah.
And with Johnson, yeah, it makes sense that he would be that conspirator. He wanted the throne and people wanted to give it to him. But if you look at history, Johnson was about to get dumped from the ticket because he was about to be arrested. And
Hmm.
that was because he was involved in, Google this, the Bobby Baker scandal, and that was going to pull him down from power, and they were going to put somebody else on the ticket. So if you were planning something like that, would you trust someone who could sell you out to keep themselves in power? I wouldn't. I mean, if I was going to do something like that, I wouldn't trust somebody who I knew could sell me off and benefit themselves. So
Hmm.
I don't see them trusting Johnson at all.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think he was involved in that. Yes, he certainly benefited. I
Hmm.
think he understood the game and played along later, but I don't think he was involved from the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, we live in such interesting times now that in the stuff that's said now it's literally on an every second basis, it seems like, because of the digital age. But a lot of times I'll hear stuff or I'll read stuff. I do it to stay informed, but also to kind of, for story ideas sometimes. We're not recreating the wheel here. The corruption and the world in which we live in, we know things a lot faster now. And there's no such thing as privacy anymore. But
Right.
a lot of that stuff was happening, and much of that obviously predates Kennedy and everything else that happened. But I think the Kennedy thing, personally, and I wasn't born when the Kennedy stuff happened, obviously, but
Hmm.
I think most people look back on that as that's where we are kind of really starting the television age during
Right.
Kennedy's administration, and it was kind of like that innocence lost. I think because you had this new technology that you could have the leader of it used to be maybe you were lucky enough to go the a whistle stop tour, and the president was coming through on a train, and you
Right.
could go hear the president of the United States talk, gather around this train track, and he's gonna sit at the end of the caboose and be like rah rah rah.
Hmm.
Yeah, all that stuff. That's how you communicated in newspapers, all the other stuff. Well, now and then you go into radio, and now your president has to, they can't be too ugly, or
Right.
they can't butcher the English language too bad. Ha
Right.
ha ha. Maybe obviously in the last 20 years, maybe that's
Yeah.
the case, but no, the presidents though that have gotten a lot of the attention and kind of been looked at, I think, kinder than others are the ones that are really, the Ronald Reagans, the Clinton. I mean, Clinton. I've never
Hmm.
met Clinton. I know people that have, and one of his gifts is if you're sitting there talking to Bill Clinton and he's looking across from you and starts talking to you, you feel like you're the most important person in the world. He
Yeah.
has the
He's a
ability
big,
to
impressive guy.
draw people in. Well, that's a
Yeah.
talent, and that's something that conveys well. Obama,
Hmm.
very articulate, very kind of like grab people's attention. And it's I don't know, it's just wild. It's wild how things have changed really since Kennedy.
Right.
And I don't see us ever going back, honestly, either. So now there's a certain precedent you have to set.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened. I mean, you had radio usher in only a few years before the first the Second World War, the first announcements of the Second World
Right.
War, and then you had Pearl Harbor, which brought horror right into the kitchen and into the homes of millions of Americans, and then you had the war effort, which was, and then followed that by a lot of the post-war boom that people were able to enjoy here in America. And you had the Eisenhower years, which was relative peace and prosperity. Then you had this horror come right into their living room when Kennedy was killed.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that they didn't have like we have today. Today, they always focus. I think it's been ever since the Challenger explosion, where they keep repeating the same footage over and over again to drive home the tragedy. Back then, there was no footage of the Kennedy assassination. It was
Mhm.
just live shots of people on the street grieving, trying to come to terms with this. They didn't have the Zapruder film that plays now every time there's a Kennedy documentary,
Yep.
and they didn't play it in slow motion. The original was uh, grainy and it moved around a lot and it was too gory to air.
Mhm.
So, we have to look at it as these a whole generation of people didn't see that footage. They had their opinion formed for them by anchors like Walter Cronkite and people like Edward R. Murrow, people like that.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's a different way to look at it.
100%. Well, just speaking towards that subject, there was at least, whether it was correct or not, at that point, you had very few media sources. And
Right,
yeah, if Walter Cronkite got on the news and said, aliens have landed on the south lawn of the White House and they've come in peace, we don't need to worry. People, that was the gospel. That was the
right,
truth. Versus now, if someone's on CNN or Fox News, the hardcore believers go, oh, "This is true." The opposite's going, "Well, that's flat out lie," you
right,
know. And also, it doesn't matter if you've got photographic video proof or whatever. I've seen deep fakes of Tom Cruise saying all kinds of things that Tom
right.
Cruise has never said because now we can't trust our eyes, we can't trust our audio. It's AI is coming full steam, and a Grok and all these other things, and it just changing where it's just like, okay, I see why it was Camelot. Now I'm talking back to Kennedy because it's like in some ways that was a more innocent time, and also you didn't have all these other things like vying for your emotions and affections and time.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. You had television that was seen as the big enemy of radio and movies.
Right.
And so, that and television was incredibly limited. I mean, yeah, you had the reporters who rushed on the air that day, breathless, trying to tell you what they saw. And
Mhm.
then in the coming days, there's even footage of Dan Rather who said he did see the Zapruder film at the time, and he completely botched it. I mean, I kind of wonder if he was either told what to say or because he got all of the details completely wrong. He
Mhm.
didn't mention that Kennedy goes back and to the left. He said, "Oh, he reaches forward and sags." Well, we they never thought we were going to see the Zapruder film,
Yeah.
and they never thought we were going to read the Warren Commission report.
Right.
And they admitted that. They said, I know Dulles, who was on the Warren Commission, said no one's ever going to read this,
Hmm.
and they're going to move on and forget about this eventually. Unfortunately, when you leave too many questions hanging out there, you give people to hang their hat on something, they're not going to go away from it.
Yeah, they're absolutely not. Well, and then in more recent our generation, we had 9/11 and the 9/11 report come out where, we've had this other just horrific event happen that again kind of changed the fabric of our society to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I feel old when I tell my I'm old, but I feel old when I'm tell stories from my kids when I used to get on a plane when I was 13, 14 and fly down to Georgia from Connecticut down to Georgia by myself. And my aunt could go through the security line and meet me at the gate. So it wasn't like I was just
Right.
roaming around Atlanta by myself. It was still relatively safe. But tell my kids, yeah, you didn't have someone patting you down. You weren't going through these machines and putting your hands up, and you weren't sitting. I mean, security. If security took you more than a couple minutes, it was like, what are you jokers doing? Just walk through
Yeah.
this little machine, and if I go beep, stop me. It was just a completely air travel was so. I remember flying as a kid. The cockpit door was open. 'Cause, there was
Yeah.
times you look in there and there's the pilot. Oh, hey, he's flying a plane. Well, this is crazy. It's like,
Yeah. And
that's
and people smoked on planes and
oh
everything.
yeah.
It was,
That planes used to. Hey kids, planes used to be somewhat empty sometimes. You could have a whole row to yourself sometimes when you were flying over to California, like I had. This is great.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And the food was better and everything else. But yeah, I mean, it's just people. Yeah. I think that's why people sometimes gravitate to historic fiction because it
Yeah,
gives them a glimpse into a time they're interested in, but might not necessarily know. And I think for a writer, for the reason why I like writing in past times, it allows me to explore um, story settings and story ideas that we might not be able to get away with in today's world because I
right.
think people are not as innocent or as trusting as they were back then. And I'd rather go to that one event that we can point to as a nation to say our innocence was lost that
Mhm.
day than just continue to pile on and say, have the pessimistic view of how America is now.
Yeah, yeah. It's just part of me is very hopeful for the future. Then part of me is like, Fiji Island. I need an island. How can I sell enough books to buy an island? It's like, whoa, I know how many books I have to sell to quit my day job, and that's not a small number. To be able
Right.
to buy an island in Fiji, buy the Survivor Island, well, that's going to be a lot. I'm going to need to sit down with Stephen King or John Grisham or one of these guys and be like, hey, you need a co-writer?
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I know that's what we need. It's just it's amazing, but things I think the more they change, the more they stay the same.
Right. Well, again, I think and you're a student of history. I actually a finance major, a history minor, and
Okay?
I think when you see the cycles that happen, so and everyone always thinks their generation and the times they're living, the end times thought process. This
Right,
is always the end. It's like from a Christian standpoint, it's like Christ is returning before our interview's over. It's like
right,
yeah, they also thought that a long time ago, and
right.
maybe if that's a correct philosophy, maybe that will happen. But you can't live your life in this fear thought process of what's going to happen in the future. It's like it's cyclical. Things happen. Things get better. Things fall off the cliff, and humanity doesn't. the bad things humans do when again, like with you studying history for what you've had to do for writing, with what I've studied, it's like bad things aren't a new thing. They used to just come in and they would just destroy the entire village. They'd
Right.
rape the women,
Yeah.
kill the kids, destroy the animals, take the women back with them sometimes. If you go back to Viking days where they're just grabbing the women and going. I mean, there's some
Right.
crazy shit that's happened in the past that makes now go like, oh, we're pretty civil. Maybe
Mhm.
we're getting away from that now that we can drone someone from 5,000 miles away and drop a bomb on their house and with
Right. Yeah.
precision. But the things, there's a lot of things that are dramatically better, for most of society now
Yeah.
versus a couple thousand years ago or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you've got technology, you've got people living longer, you've got medicine
Yep.
that definitely makes our lives better. You don't have people dying at 50 anymore.
Right.
And I know that the unfortunate part of today, as opposed to even back in the 1960s, from what I've seen, is that people aren't stoic anymore. Growing up in the 70s, I remember no one in my family wanted to admit they had cancer,
Hmm.
because for the Irish, for some reason, cancer was seen as a farm animals disease,
Hmm.
and it was shameful. Now today, there's nothing shameful about cancer. There never was,
Right.
but it shows you how people change and their views on things. But also, you have people who are trying to make things worse, and make their situations seem worse in other ways because they want to keep that asterisk. Because
Hmm.
if they aren't a victim, then they might not get paid attention to, or they might lose some of their status.
Yep.
And there's something to be said about being stoic and saying, "I'm not a victim of this. Look at what I achieved in spite of all of this." But people don't want to do that. They want to invoke things like there are Gestapo tactics going on in the country where people are being whisked off. If you look at the way the Gestapo worked, that isn't how it worked in real life.
Right.
They shot people on the street, and those people didn't get deported. They were in the camp system, and then they never left.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing just erodes the fabric of a country.
Right.
And when I compare it to 63 to now, there were people saying the same thing, that the country was doomed, but I didn't see it happen then, and I certainly don't see it happening now. I'm disturbed by the people who seem to be rooting for it so that
Yeah.
they can affect change on their own terms, and that I don't like.
Yeah, it's a weird time with that. And I definitely don't remember as much of that growing up where the anti-American sentiment is so strong.
Mm-hmm.
And my thought process on that, which I'm entitled to my opinion as well, is like, hey, if you don't like it here, leave or
Yeah,
go across another border, go see how you're treated. If you just try to, go to London,
yeah,
overstay your visa, stay for more than 90 days, 60, 90, whatever, 90 days, I think. Stay for over 90 days and then get arrested for something petty. And they run your passport and go, oh, you've been here for 340 days. Be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a right to stay here. Guess what? It's a high probability they're not going to say, "Oh, crikey, stay,
yeah,
good, all good, yeah, yeah." Do you need some health care? Do you need this? No, they're going to say, "Get the hell out of my country."
right. Yeah.
So,
And my wife's family's from Guatemala. If I go down there and act the fool after I overstay a visa, they are not going to give me, hot cocoa and a blanket. They're going to give me a kick in the ass and stick me in the cell and
yeah,
get me on the next plane back here. And,
right,
I mean, it's just, I, I, I applaud the people who want better treatment for people, and I know it is a slippery slope, but also people have to stop working themselves into a tizzy over stuff that we are light years from there.
yeah,
And when you start throwing around Nazi um ideology, and you start throwing around Nazisms and evoke that kind of action on government, that is a slippery slope, and that
yeah,
terrifies people, and
right.
that should, if it's the case, but when it's not, it's reckless.
Yes, it is. And again, I think that's circling back to what we talked about before. I think that's where people that don't have an appreciation or an understanding of history,
Right.
they see something on TikTok or they see something on Instagram that says this political leader is this, and they go, "Oh, well, that must be true."
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe, but do your homework and see if it's actually true. And I
Yeah.
think that's probably where society has faltered a little bit in the last, say, 20, 30 years, is there's this mindset sometimes of wanting to accept something very quickly without doing the work to see if A, do you actually really believe that, or B, is that actually based on facts?
Right,
And I think that's one gift that we're given with being storytellers and writers, is we end up having to do a lot of research for the most part. Even if we, man, you could research, and you know this, you can spend hours, and I mean, you can spend days looking at something, and it ends up being 3 lines in a paragraph.
right,
But to get those 3 lines right, and you also know that if you don't get those 3 lines right, and especially if it's a big enough deal, like if you're dealing with something in the police or you're dealing with something with the FBI or whatever,
right,
if enough people know that you're just totally full of crap, you're gonna hear about it, and also you're gonna lose them for any future stories of them going, well, this person doesn't know what they're talking about.
right,
They make up stuff they don't have to make up.
right.
So you have to get stuff as right as you possibly can make it be.
Right, and making it human. I know that. Give you an example. I worked in economic development for New York State for a while, and I worked for a guy who had a chance to hire someone straight out of the army who was
Mhm.
a West Point grad, and he was delighted because he figured he was going to be getting his own toy soldier. I tell him to do something, he's going to do it, no questions asked.
Mhm.
And the rest of us were thinking, and this turned out to be the case, where we said these guys aren't automatons. Yeah, they have skill, and this guy actually came out of the quartermaster course, so it wasn't like he was Jack Carr or somebody, but
Right.
he still served, and that was more than I've done. But people have this misconception that just because they're a special operator or because they were a SEAL or a Green Beret or whatever, that they're these automatic, thoughtless, mindless killers. And they're the ones that usually have to ask a lot of questions because it's their backside on the line.
Right.
And they're not going to just go in and do something because you tell them. They have to put a lot of thought into it to make it happen. And I think that when we reflect that kind of stuff in our stories, whether we're writing about special operators or an FBI person or a Secret Service person, that makes the story a lot more credible with the audience
Right.
because these are
Absolutely.
stories about people. They're not just cookie cutter. For every Rambo there is, and Rambo is a lot more complex in the book. There's a lot of other characters that accurately portray how people conduct that kind of warfare.
Absolutely. Um, where does Terrence go next? Twilight Town out, Dallas 63 novels. So what's in the next delivery?
The next one is in the shoot is the second book in the trilogy of Dallas 63.
Okay.
This one the Twilight Town takes place from February 63 all the way to the assassination day on November 22nd. Then on the second book is going to be about Oswald's capture to Oswald's execution,
Oh
and it's going
wow.
to be about Dan Wilson trying to free him from captivity. And obviously he fails, but the reasons why he fails are the reason to read. And then the third book is going to be split between the hunt for the real killers of JFK and all the way up to Vietnam as well. It'll be a split time book. So that's going to be a lot of fun to write too.
So you've been living in this world for a little bit.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the JFK assassination, or more importantly, I've been fascinated by the fascination of the
Right.
JFK assassination. And I've said this elsewhere. I've been more interested in why people care about Bigfoot and ancient aliens and UFOs, things like that, than the phenomena themselves. But with
Yeah.
JFK, there's always something there. Whenever you think you've got one part of it written off, there's another aspect that says, but what about this? And
Right.
you can do that about anything. But with this one, the secondary characters who are involved with Oswald and with the other people that are in this, they keep popping up with interesting ties, and I
Mhm.
think that's what's kept this along for so long, and that's what interested me. It was about digging below. It's not just about what happened in Dealey Plaza. It's also about what happened in the months leading up to Dealey Plaza and what happened afterwards that tell you there was something there that day.
One last thing too. Have you been there and seen the spot? Have you?
Every time I have tried to go to Texas, something absolutely horrible has happened in my personal life. So,
The Warren Commission kind of gets in the way every time somehow.
it was either, my parents got sick both times I was trying to go in the early
Mm,
2000s. And then I had a meeting at my job that got changed. And so, yeah, I tried to go to Texas 4 times. I haven't yet, but I'm hoping to get there later this year because I've heard a lot of great things about Texas in general and
yeah.
Dallas in specific. And I would like to get there and take a look at everything myself. But I understand it's not a very big area. It's a lot smaller than it looks on television.
Yeah, so I have an office, same company but different job title. I used to travel a lot more, and one of my offices was in Arlington, outside of Dallas. So
Okay.
one evening I went down and kind of just explored. I didn't get into the book deposit. I didn't get up there. It was closed at that point, but I was able to stand there and see it. And you actually go down to the road, and they've got like a marking on the asphalt of where he actually was when he got shot. I've gone to the grassy knoll. There's a JFK, not a statue. There's some kind of little architecture thing they have there that you can see, kind of a memorial to JFK
Mhm.
in that location as well. And I mean, it's haunting to be there, and because
Yeah.
you realize the history changing moment that took place there. And I mean, now you're talking so many years ago, but
Yeah.
it's you still feel it.
Yeah.
You still definitely feel it there.
Yeah, because there was a lot going on there, and there was a lot of, and I think we have to remember it left a huge scar on the nation without anybody ever seeing the Zapruder film. The Zapruder film enough will leave an impact, because I
Right.
know it certainly did on me when I saw it in the late 70s, early 80s as a little
Mhm.
kid, which I shouldn't have been allowed to see anyway. But, back then they didn't care. It was,
Yeah.
this is on. You sit there, great, you're going to get traumatized. That's your problem.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of child friendly programming then. Um, but anyway, so I mean, we have that now. Back then, they didn't have that. They just had speculation
Mhm.
that was without visual aids that encouraged them to say something still doesn't feel right here. And I think that makes the whole enduring of the conspiracy idea even more impressive.
It absolutely does. So, well, folks, Twilight Town, a Dallas 63 novel. By the time this airs, it's out. So get a copy, and then you can be ready for where Terrence takes it with two more books, which is
Two more
pretty
books
cool.
after that. Yep. And everybody, don't forget that Supreme Justice is on sale July 15th. It's in Kindle version, hardcover, and paperback. And you're going to really love where he takes the Body Man series in this book and in future books, too.
Thanks for doing this, my friend. We'll do it again.
You too, pal. Thank you very much.